Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the quiet little town of Harrisonville, the inhabitants went about their lives peacefully, believing that calm was the only constant. But beneath this surface, invisible tensions simmered. Skin color could still decide a person's fate in an instant, even in a city that prided itself on its safety and justice. Marcus Turner, only son of the General Robert Turner, walked that evening through the familiar streets with the sure step of a young man raised in discipline and dignity. At 22, he proudly wore the Army uniform, symbolizing a legacy of courage and loyalty. His father, a respected and strict figure, had taught him that strength lies not only in muscles or weapons, but in self-control, justice, and the determination to protect what is right. Yet Marcus had no idea that a chance encounter with an arrogant, racist police officer that evening would turn his life upside down. A simple walk home would turn into a test of courage, dignity, and integrity, revealing to everyone that even in the face of injustice, some values remain indomitable. That night, Marcus would discover that the real battle was fought not only on the battlefield, but also in the streets of his own city. And that the price of dignity can sometimes be paid in blood and courage. Night was falling gently on Harrisonville, its golden street lamps casting a soft light on the immaculate sidewalks. The street seemed calm, almost unreal, but for Marcus Turner, every step echoed with the discipline he had learned in the Army. His perfectly pressed military uniform and the medal shining on his chest attracted admiring glances from some locals, although he never sought attention. That evening, Marcus returned from daily training. His morning mission had been trying, but he felt proud and serene. He thought of his father, General Robert Turner, who had instilled in him that dignity and self-control were weapons far more powerful than any rifle. As he approached his car parked in front of his house, a shout rang out behind him. "Hey you! Stop!" Marcus turned around and saw Agent Ethan Collins, a young police officer with a cold, contemptuous gaze. Collins was known for his arrogance and explosive temper. He pointed his finger at Marcus, his face red with suppressed anger. "You look like someone we're looking for," Collins yelled. Marcus raised his hands, surprised but calm. "Excuse me? I didn't do anything. I'm just going home." But Collins wouldn't listen. Without warning, he grabbed Marcus by the arm and pushed him against the hood of his car. Passers-by began to stop, shocked by the scene. "Don't move," Collins shouted. "Don't lie, I know what you were doing in the neighborhood." Marcus, controlling his breathing, said in a calm but firm voice, "I assure you, I did nothing wrong." "You are mistaken." The police officer, blinded by his prejudice, slapped him violently, causing a small crowd to gather. Residents gathered around, some outraged, others discreetly reaching for their phones to film the scene. Marcus absorbed the blows, aware that any aggressive reaction could make the situation worse. He thought of his father and everything he had taught him, to stay calm, to observe, and to wait for the moment to restore justice. That night, Marcus would learn that courage is not only measured in military combat, but also in maintaining dignity in the face of injustice. Passers-by watched, frozen by the injustice. Some whispered among themselves, others discreetly picked up their phones to film the scene. But no one knew how to intervene. Agent Ethan Collins, whose arrogance and brutality seemed limitless. Marcus, still calm despite the shock, tried to reason with the policeman. "Sir, I assure you that you are mistaken. I have nothing to do with what you are looking for." Collins, red with anger and visibly frustrated at not provoking an aggressive reaction, pushed him back against the hood of his car a second time. "Don't talk to me like that," he yelled. "I know you and your gang." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "I don't have a tape. I'm just going home." The young police officer, unable to control his arrogance, raised his hand and slapped Marcus again, this time more violently. A shout escaped from a witness, "Hey! Stop that right now." But Collins didn't stop. He didn't know that Marcus wasn't just another citizen, but the only son of the General, Robert Turner, respected for his righteousness and influence in the military. Collins had no idea that every blow to Marcus would set off a chain reaction that could turn his career and his life upside down. Marcus, stifling the pain but controlling his anger, thought of his father and what he had taught him. True strength lies in self-control. He didn't fight back. Instead, he watched the policeman, noting every gesture, every word, ready to transform this injustice into proof and testimony. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some were asking Collins to stop, while others were taking video of the scene. Marcus, seeing the situation worsen, discreetly took out his phone and sent a message to his mother, Angela Turner. "Mom, help. Collins is hitting me. I'm by the car in front of 47 Main Street. Dad needs to know." This simple gesture would change the course of the evening. A few minutes later, the siren of a military car sounded in the street, signaling the imminent arrival of General Turner. Collins, focused on Marcus, had no idea of the shockwave he had just caused. And that night, Marcus would discover that even in the face of brutality and racism, composure and dignity could be the most powerful weapons. The siren echoed through the street, startling Collins and attracting the attention of passers-by. A large military vehicle stopped abruptly in front of Marcus. The engine died and the car got out. General Robert Turner, serious face and piercing gaze, immediately commanding respect. Collins, focused on Marcus, didn't immediately notice the general's arrival. Marcus, relieved but still tense, breathed lightly, "Dad." The general quickly advanced towards his son, observing the scene. His impeccable uniform, decorated with medals and distinctions, seemed to almost illuminate the street. He placed a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder, who was holding back the pain of the blows. "Let him go immediately," General Turner ordered, his voice ringing with authority. Collins stepped back, surprised and intimidated. He had never faced someone with such presence and moral authority. "General, this young man fits the description of a suspect," Collins stammered, trying to defend his actions. Robert Turner stared at Collins coldly. "I don't want to hear any excuses. You're hitting an innocent citizen, and worse, you're hitting my son." The crowd, now attentive, murmured at the confrontation. Marcus, still leaning against the car, felt the support and protection his father's mere presence provided. He straightened slightly, his gaze determined, and added, "Officer, it was never my intention to run away or disrespect you. You were mistaken." General Turner looked Collins straight in the eye. "You will immediately write a full and detailed report. And I want that report to include your actions and your motives. You will remain suspended until further notice." Collins, ashamed and unsettled, tried to protest, but the general's imposing gaze prevented him from continuing. He stepped back, his hands trembling slightly, while passers-by now filmed the entire scene. Marcus, catching his breath, realized that this intervention had just changed the dynamic of the situation. For the first time since the beginning of the altercation, he felt protected, not only by his father but also by the imminent justice that would follow. General Turner placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Go home, Marcus. We'll handle this properly." And for Marcus, the lesson that night was clear: even in the face of brutality and injustice, courage, dignity, and the support of those who are righteous can transform a desperate situation into a fight for justice. As Marcus and his father returned to the car, a small crowd of neighbors watched, shocked and concerned. Several of them had filmed the altercation on their phones. Hours later, the video was shared on social media, and the scene went viral in record time. The footage showed Marcus, a calm and disciplined young man, taking the blows without ever fighting back, facing an arrogant and aggressive police officer. Internet users reacted immediately: indignation, anger, support for Marcus. The hashtag #JusticeForMarcus began to circulate. Word spread like wildfire in the neighborhood. Harrisonville residents, who thought they knew their city, realized that even in a peaceful community, injustices could occur in broad daylight. General Turner, sitting in his car beside his son, watched the video a second time, his jaw clenched. "Marcus, I'm proud of you for your composure. But this video is now going to get national attention." Marcus sighed, "I didn't want it to be a spectacle, Dad." I just wanted to go home. Sometimes, son, injustices must be visible for the world to act, the general replied. For his part, Agent Ethan Collins was facing immediate pressure. The local police could not ignore the viral nature of the incident. His superior, concerned about the department's reputation, summoned Collins for an internal investigation. Collins, once secure in his impunity, began to realize that his actions had consequences. In the city, the video sparked debate, spontaneous protests, and a sense of unity among residents. Marcus, despite his initial humiliation, became a symbol of courage and dignity. People commented on his self-control and the quiet strength he demonstrated in the face of injustice. General Turner knew the fight for justice was only just beginning. But for the first time, he felt that he and his son were not alone. The truth had found a way to be heard, and it might change Harrisonville forever. The next morning, the police department of Harrisonville was in turmoil. The video showing Marcus Turner hit by the officer Ethan Collins was already circulating on all media platforms, and the police chief called an emergency meeting. Collins, nervous and agitated, entered the chief's office. His hands were shaking slightly, and he avoided the gaze of the more senior officers who were scrutinizing him with astonishment and disapproval. Agent Collins, you are being summoned for an immediate internal investigation regarding last night's incident, the chief said firmly. Your behavior is unacceptable and will be thoroughly investigated. Collins stammered an excuse. I thought he was involved. The chief interrupted him. Your assumptions are worthless in the face of the evidence. The video speaks for itself. Meanwhile, Marcus and his father watched the situation unfold from their home. The General Robert Turner, true to his reputation for rigor and justice, ensured that the case was handled transparently. He contacted his connections in the military and local government to ensure that Collins could not hide his actions behind the influence of certain colleagues. Marcus, despite the initial humiliation, felt strong. He had respected the most important rule taught by his father: remain calm and let the truth speak for him. The video, now viral, was a testament to his dignity and self-control. Within the police department, officers began to quietly discuss Collins's reputation and problematic behavior. Some whispered that the incident could mark the end of his career. Harrisonville residents, meanwhile, organized peaceful meetings and marches to denounce racism and police brutality. Collins, realizing that his arrogance and brutality had betrayed him, felt the pressure mounting. The weight of his actions and the public anger were crushing him. He had never imagined that striking the son of a respected general could trigger such an upheaval. For Marcus and his father, however, it was a moral victory. They knew the battle for justice was only just beginning, but for the first time, truth seemed about to triumph over injustice. In the following days, the case of Marcus Turner became a hot topic throughout the city and beyond. Local and national television stations picked up the viral video showing Agent Ethan Collins hitting Marcus for no reason. Comments on social media multiplied: outrage, support for Marcus, calls for justice. Marcus, sitting in the living room with his father, calmly listened to the news. Son, I know this can be overwhelming, the general said. Robert Turner, his voice deep but reassuring. But we must remain focused. The truth is on our side, and we will make sure it is respected. For his part, Collins saw his professional life crumble. Phone calls from worried superiors, press articles pointing fingers at him, and public criticism put him under pressure he had never experienced before. Even his colleagues were beginning to distance themselves, aware that his reputation was irreparably tarnished. Harrisonville residents held peaceful protests in support of Marcus and to denounce racism and police brutality. Signs carried messages such as, "Justice for Marcus. Dignity cannot be beaten." Amid this media storm, Marcus remained in control of himself. He agreed to a few interviews, but always spoke with calm and dignity. I never wanted to be the center of this attention. But what you see in the video is the reality of what can happen when prejudice replaces justice. General Turner understood that the impact went far beyond their family. The city, and even the state, were beginning to wake up to the systemic problems and the need for real change in the way the police treated citizens. For Collins, the weight of his actions was becoming unbearable. He understood that violence and arrogance could not mask his mistakes, and that the truth would always come out. Marcus, for his part, felt a strange sense of satisfaction, despite the humiliation, he had held on. And this quiet strength, combined with the support of his father and his community, could make a difference for many other victims of injustice. The police department of Harrisonville officially announced the agent's suspension. Ethan Collins. Superiors declared that a full internal investigation would be conducted to examine his behavior, and that severe disciplinary action would follow. Collins, confronted with the gravity of his actions, realized that he could no longer rely on his arrogance to protect himself. In the town, the news was greeted with a mixture of relief and pride. Residents began to see that justice could triumph, even against those who seemed untouchable. Marcus Turner became a symbol not only of courage, but also of dignity and self-control. The General Robert Turner, proud of his son, declared at a press conference, "Marcus has shown that true strength lies not in violence, but in the ability to maintain dignity in the face of injustice. This case should remind everyone that abuses of power will not go unpunished." Collins, publicly humiliated and facing pressure from the media and his colleagues, began to realize that his actions would have lasting repercussions on his career. His clumsy and belated public apology failed to erase the image of his aggressive and racist behavior. Meanwhile, Marcus was gradually returning to normal life, but he knew his role extended beyond his own experience. He met with local residents, young people, and families who had experienced injustice, and shared with them his experience and advice on how to stay strong in the face of discrimination. The community, inspired by Marcus and supported by his father's integrity, began to unite to implement awareness programs and initiatives against racism and abuse of power. Harrisonville was slowly changing, and Marcus, through his strength and calm, had ignited the spark of change. That evening, as he walked home, Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not for the victory over Collins, but because he had shown that dignity, patience, and courage could turn injustice into a lesson for all. The weeks following the incident were marked by a palpable change in Harrisonville. The inhabitants, inspired by the courage and dignity of Marcus Turner, began to organize to denounce injustices and promote respect for all citizens, regardless of their skin color. Community meetings were held, with Marcus and his father Robert Turner as speakers. They shared their experiences and explained the importance of remaining calm and determined in the face of abuse. Marcus spoke with impressive clarity and maturity for his age. Violence and hatred solve nothing. True strength lies in dignity and self-respect. If we stand together, we can change things. During this time, Ethan Collins was suffering the consequences of his actions. The suspension turned into a formal termination after the internal investigation concluded. The Harrisonville police imposed strict new rules on officer behavior and launched training programs against bias and brutality. Collins, now isolated and publicly discredited, realized that his arrogance and brutality had destroyed his career. The media continued to follow the story, highlighting Marcus's example and his father's exemplary response. The entire town began to talk about change and justice, and several young people who had witnessed or experienced discrimination began to speak out, inspired by Marcus. For Marcus, the sense of accomplishment came not from Collins's humiliation, but from the positive impact he had on his community. He knew that his self-control and composure had paved the way for real, lasting, and visible change. That evening, sitting with his father, Marcus smiled. "Dad, I think our city is beginning to understand what justice means." General Turner placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, son. And it's because of you that this change is possible. Never forget, dignity and patience are sometimes the most powerful weapons we possess." Harrisonville, once quiet and passively tolerant, was becoming a beacon of solidarity and courage, all thanks to the quiet strength of one young man who refused to give in to injustice. A few months after the incident, Marcus Turner and his father, the General Robert Turner, were invited to a ceremony organized by the city of Harrisonville to honor Marcus's courage and exemplary behavior. The city's central square was decorated with banners and flags, and a large crowd gathered to celebrate the young man's dignity and moral strength. At the ceremony, the mayor spoke. "Today we honor Marcus Turner, a young man who, through his courage and self-control, showed everyone what true dignity means. His example inspires not only our city, but the entire country. Marcus, visibly moved but still calm, replied humbly. Thank you all. I have only remained myself in the face of injustice. But I believe that each of us has the power to choose dignity over violence, and truth over lies. Video of the incident and Marcus's journey were projected onto a giant screen, reminding the crowd of the officer's brutality, Ethan Collins, and the young man's resilience. Collins, now dismissed and discredited, watched from afar, aware that his behavior had led to irreversible public humiliation. General Turner placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder and whispered, "Son, you have turned injustice into an example for thousands of people. I am proud of you." The entire town understood that this event was not just the story of a young man unjustly beaten, but that of a community capable of change and solidarity. Initiatives against racism and brutality multiplied, and Marcus became a role model for the youth of Harrisonville. This public recognition confirmed what Marcus had understood from the start: quiet strength, courage, and self-control could transform an act of violence into a powerful lever for justice and social change. A few months after the ceremony, Harrisonville had changed. The inhabitants, inspired by the courage of Marcus Turner, had implemented educational programs on respect, equality, and justice. Schools incorporated courses on civil rights and peaceful conflict resolution. The local police had adopted strict new procedures to prevent abuses and train officers to respect all citizens. Marcus, despite his growing fame, remained humble. He continued to frequent his community, encouraging young people to stand up for their rights with dignity and calm. The locals considered him a living symbol of courage and justice. Ethan Collins, meanwhile, had left Harrisonville. His arrogance and violence had destroyed his career, and he could only watch from afar as the change he had unwittingly helped bring about was unfolded. The General Robert Turner and Marcus spent a lot of time working on local initiatives, reinforcing the idea that justice and respect could triumph over injustice and hatred. One evening, as they walked through the now peaceful neighborhood, Marcus said, "Dad, look, the city seems different. People are more united, more respectful of each other." The general smiled proudly. "Yes, son. And it's thanks to you. You've shown that dignity and courage can change the world, even in the face of violence." This story left a lasting mark on Harrisonville. What began as an act of racial brutality became an example of strength, courage, and justice. Marcus Turner and his father not only protected their family but also planted the seeds of lasting change for their entire community. And in the streets of Harrisonville, the memory of that day remained etched, that of a young black man who, through his dignity and self-control, had transformed injustice into hope and unity for all.